My guest today is a true tech and marketing legend. He is the Chief Evangelist of Canva. He was the Chief Evangelist of Apple.
I quit Apple twice and I turned Steve Jobs down for another job.
He has written several books such as Wise Guy, The Art of Start to Zero, The Art of Social Media.
And I hope someday people are saying, oh, I read Think Remarkable and it changed my life.
Please give it up for the one and only Guy Kawasaki.
Welcome to the EU Startups Podcast. Sit back and enjoy the show hosted by Marcin Lewandowski.
This episode of EU Startups Podcast is brought to you by Vanta. Are you building a business? Achieving compliance with frameworks like ISO 27001 and SOC 2 can help you win bigger deals, enter new markets, and deepen trust with customers. But this can also cost you real time and money. Vanta rhymes with Santa. Automates up to 90% of the work for the most in-demand frameworks, helping businesses get compliant quickly. And with over 300 integrations, you can easily monitor and secure the tools your businesses rely on. Join over 7,000 fast-growing companies that use Vanta to manage risk and prove security in real time. To learn more about how Vanta works and to get 20% off, visit vanta.com/EU Startups. That's vanta.com/EU Startups. Now, kick back and enjoy the show. Welcome, Guy. It's such an honor to have you on the show.
Well, thank you for having me on your show. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Guy, so you were born and raised in Hawaii. How did your upbringing shape your approach to life? And are there any specific values or traditions that you bring into both your life and business?
Sure. So I was born and raised in Hawaii, as you said, and I'm Japanese American. So there's a lot of forces there. Being from Hawaii, which was a very heterogeneous society, and I was in a lower middle class family. So, that sort of grounds you, right? Because it's not like life was handed to me on a silver platter. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, I don't want to give the impression that I, have to overcome such tremendous problems of health or addiction or, prosecution or persecution, any of that. I had a nice lower middle class upbringing with no drama or very little drama. And so that's the Hawaiian part. The Japanese part, I think a lot of it is the values of, considering yourself lucky, understanding the value of grit and determination and not giving up and, doing things for years and years to perfect them. There's this like stereotype of there's this Japanese artisan and he or she is the best person at making samurai swords or, pottery or some kind of ink calligraphy or whatever. And I can't tell you I'm one of those living treasures, but I kind of think I have a little bit of that DNA in my life that I can definitely keep grinding at something beyond most people.
Awesome. So you've had a front row seat to the evolution of technology, from being the Chief Evangelist at Apple to becoming the Chief Evangelist of Canva. Can you share a backstage story from the Apple days, like any Macintosh marketing secrets you can reveal? And how did your experience at Apple influence your approach to marketing and entrepreneurship?
So I worked for Apple twice in my life, from 1983 to 1987, and then 1995 to 1997. Mm-hmm. And I was in the first tour, I was a software evangelist. So my job was to convince people to write Mac software and Mac hardware products. The second time I was Apple's chief evangelist, and that was more about preserving Apple. Keeping it alive, because believe it or not, back then Apple was supposed to die, according to all the experts.
Right.
What I learned from the Macintosh division in particular, and that was working for Steve Jobs, was just that, sometimes if you build it, they will come. A lot of people say, don't do that, You got to have all this careful analysis and background, and make sure you fulfill a well understood need. I don't recollect that's how we did things. Basically, yeah, Steve Jobs is the one and only. And there's two ways of interpreting Steve. One is that he knew what people would want before they did. A second way is he would make what he wanted and then convince people to want it also. There's an element of truth to both of those. You can definitely interpret Steve Jobs in both of those ways, because he did do both things. So what I learned is, that quality counts, innovation counts. It's not just marketing. So I'm a marketer, but I'll tell you something, that it is very easy to evangelize and market something great. It is very hard to evangelize and market shit. So, if you have the choice, pick something great.
Right. So actually, this is a great follow-up question, moment for that, because as a chief evangelist of both Apple and Canva, you've been a key player in promoting innovative products. So what actually makes a product truly remarkable, and how do you go about evangelizing it?
Oh, if I could answer that on a podcast, I would charge you a lot to have me on your podcast. I think I'll give you some methods that will at least increase the probability. And, I learned this. I have a podcast called Remarkable People, and I've interviewed people like the chief of staff of Jeff Bezos. I interviewed Steve Wozniak, also some behavioral economists. And so from a both academic and entrepreneurial perspective, I've gained a lot of insight. And then, of course, I lived that at Canva and Apple. And I think that it starts with some theories. So one theory is that you work backwards from what your customer would need, as opposed to forward from what you like to do, you have been doing, you can do, et cetera, et cetera. And I think one of the great examples of this is that Kodak in 1975 invented digital photography. Of course, we don't associate Kodak with digital photography. In fact, many of your listeners may not even know who Kodak is anymore. But, I think Kodak was working forwards. We make film, we make negatives, we make, prints. We're a chemicals company, and that's what we're going to do. And we're very successful at it, and we like doing that. But if you work backwards from the customer, you'd have to say, well, what were customers really getting from Kodak? And what they were getting was the ability to preserve memories. So Kodak was fundamentally in the preservation of memories business, not the chemicals business. So if they had worked backwards from the customer, they, I hope, would have embraced digital photography, and they would use chemical photography to fund digital photography. And, Kodak would be what Sony is today. So that's one example of working backwards. Another is to either go and see your customer in action, or even better, go and be your customer in action. And so when a Toyota's theory is go and see. So if you want to know what's happening, you don't just read reports, you actually go onto the factory floor. Or if you want to see, Chrysler just introduced the minivan. Why is it doing so well? So you don't just read reports, you actually go and see people with two babies, two baby carts, two baby seats, two baby bags. What are they doing? You see it. But then I think even better than that is you go and be. So you actually go and buy a minivan. Martin Lindstrom, one of the people I interviewed for my book, he told me an example of going and being where a large pharmaceutical company wanted to be closer to its customer. And so what he did is he took their executives into a room and he made them breathe through straws. So you couldn't breathe through your mouth or nose. And after a few minutes of this, which is, it's not I wouldn't say it's hard, but it's definitely not your preferred way of breathing if you had a choice. He then said to them, listen, so you're a pharmaceuticals company, your customers have asthma. This is what it's like to have asthma. So they went and were asthmatics, albeit for a few minutes. But that's a lot better than reading what asthmatics say or watching asthmatic. This is like, this is what it's like, baby, breathing through a straw all your life.
Right. So, at Canva, you've been a part of a company that's basically transformed the way people design. How do you see the intersection of creativity and technology shaping the future of work and content creation?
Well, I think right now, this is 2024. Clearly, the integration is of artificial intelligence. So Canva is in the business of democratizing design, working backwards from the customer. What Canva figured out is that people want to make beautiful graphics in order to be better designers, better communicators. So working backwards, that's what they want to do. You want to be a better communicator. Well, here's a way. So with Canva, within minutes, you can make a much better social media graphic, a PowerPoint presentation. The way I do PowerPoint these days is I make my presentation in Canva, export to PowerPoint format. And the reason why I do that is because it's so much better to make the presentation in Canva than to make it in PowerPoint. I still have to export to PowerPoint because wherever I speak, usually the AV department is saying, give me your slides on a thumb drive, right? They don't want to run live. So I still need to deploy using PowerPoint. But, this is an example where it's a combination of you apply technology to make people's lives better. Now, fast forward to 2024. You could do things with Canva where you say, these are the rough parameters of a presentation. Spit out a presentation, spit out a document, spit out a graphics, generative AI. It's a whole new world, baby. I never thought we would. Well, I never even thought that we would be at some place like this. And then it happened so fast.
Yeah, amazing. Maybe once again about being a chief evangelist, because this requires like a unique blend of passion and storytelling. So how do you actually maintain your happiness and enthusiasm over the long term? And, how has it contributed to your success at both Apple and Canva?
Well, you're assuming that I've been happy my whole life.
I hope so.
There were definitely peaks and valleys, okay? Listen, so, as I said before, it's easy to evangelize something that's great. And I happen to have, at the start of my career with Macintosh, it was great. At the end of my career, Canva, it's great. In between, there were some ups and downs. It's not like, I just went straight up. This hockey stick curve is vastly overrated. Yeah. And it's rare, if ever. So I just been lucky to be, to have found or been found by great products.
Amazing. In your book, Wise Guy, you share a lot about your experiences and the wisdom you've gained. If you could go back in time and give one piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be, and how do you think it would have shaped your journey differently?
On a pure financial basis, maybe the advice is don't quit Apple.
Oh yeah,
because I quit Apple twice, and I turned Steve Jobs down for another job. So. And there's actually a serious piece of advice there, which is the assumption that the grass is always greener is not a good assumption. Sometimes it's better to water and fertilize the grass you're standing on, right, as opposed to trying to switch fields. And as you listen, I left Apple the first time in 1987. In 1987, if you had told me that Apple would someday be the most valuable company in the world, I would tell you that you are on some hard illegal drugs. There is no friggin' way, right? So there's a lesson there that, you know, sticking it out the long run helps. And now, that may be contrary to the typical sort of Gen Z millennial attitude of staying at a job. Like a long period of work for a millennial or Gen Z, maybe 2 years, right? And that's a lifetime. I can't say that I think that's optimal. But having said that, you know, I'm 69 years old, so maybe I'm just a dinosaur in that thinking. But I just ask your audience to consider that the grass is not always greener. Sometimes you should take care of the grass you're on.
Right. I think it's a great piece of advice. So, you know, the art of the start to zero has been a guide for like many aspiring entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
What's a lesser known principle from the book that you find particularly crucial, but you know might not get as much attention?
Well, okay, so it is amazing to me how many times I meet people who say, you know, they follow me, they read all my stuff, they read Art of the Start 2.0, they read Wise Guy, they read Think Remarkable, my latest book. And they say, okay, so I want to show you a pitch. And then they show me a pitch and it has like 30 slides with 8-point font and big paragraphs of text. No. And I have this out-of-body experience. Like, you told me you read The Art of the Start 2.0. You told me you read Wise Guy. You told me you read Think Remarkable. And everywhere I'm telling you, 10, 20, 30, 10 slides, 20 minutes, 30-point font. And you show up with 50, 68, right? 50 slides, 60 minutes, 8-point font. Like, is this an IQ test? I mean, what's the matter with you? So, I'm amazed. And you know what? Part of it is like, people have this attitude like, yeah, you know, Guy, I understand 10, 20, 30, but that's for like mediocre companies. They only need 10 slides and they can explain it quickly. But my patent pending, job jumping, curve jumping, amazingly innovative, revolutionary, patent pending, I need 60 slides. I need 60 minutes, you know, and I need to have like large blocks of text because my idea is so remarkable that, yes, if you had a simple bullshit business, 10, 20, 30 works. But for me, you know, I need 60, 68. And I said, okay, so, you know, what's your idea? And they say, oh, we're going to sell books online. And I said, like, what? This is 2023 or 2024. You're telling me you're doing the Amazon thing and you need 60 slides to explain that. Like, what the hell is wrong? So you got me on a rant here, but I swear, sometimes I'm in these meetings. And I say to myself, this is candid camera. Like, there's a camera someplace. And they're watching to see what my reaction will be when they hit me with something that is so contrary to what I've been telling them. They're going to see, what does Guy do? Does Guy take the high road and offer positive, you know, reinforcement? Or does Guy take the low road and rip me? Usually I rip them. So now you know what happens on Candid Camera if there's no Candid Camera.
Your podcast, let's move to your podcast now. Your podcast, Remarkable People, it's like a treasure trove of insight from extraordinary individuals. You described it as your most underappreciated work.
Yeah.
What makes it special for you? And can you maybe share a story? I probably like there are so many, but can you share a story or piece of advice from one of your remarkable guests that had an impact on you?
So, my podcast is called Remarkable People.
Yeah.
And so far, I've interviewed about over 200 people in the last 4 or 5 years. And these are people like Jane Goodall, Steve Wozniak, Bob Cialdini, Stacey Abrams, Katie Milkman, Stephen Wolfram. I've had several MacArthur Award winners. I really have a great guest list.
Mm-hmm.
I put my guest list up against anybody in all of podcasting. And I think it's my best work because it's taken 30 or 40 years to get to the point where I have the right balance of skepticism and optimism. And I've been there and done that so many times that I have a really sensitive and good bullshit detector.
Mm-hmm.
I also have, because I have so much data at this point, I really can ask very good questions. And by that, I mean, if you listen to many podcasts, clearly what they did is 10 minutes before the podcast, they read the person's Wikipedia entry, right? And then if they have the copy of the book, maybe they read the table of contents, or maybe they read the introduction in chapter 1, but nobody has really studied the person. And for my podcast, there's at least 6-7 hours prep for each 1 hour interview. And so there's 5, 6, 7 hours of prep, plus there's 40 years of living.
Right.
So, when people listen to my podcast, you are never going to hear a softball question like, we'll take an extreme. Sometimes you listen to NPR. You're in Spain. So NPR is like public radio in America, right?
Okay.
And sometimes they bring on an author and they have questions like, so you saw your mother kill your father when you were 12 years old. Did that affect you? Well, duh, dumb shit. Of course it's going to affect me. I saw my mother kill my father. What kind of question is that? Like, seriously, what kind of question is that? What do you think I'm going to say? No, it didn't affect me. My whole life has been unicorns farting pixie dust. Life is good. So anyway, I try to ask questions that like everybody wants to ask, but they're afraid of asking. And that's the key to my podcast. So, the best work I've done in my career.
Amazing. You kind of answered my next question a bit. I hope not entirely, because the next question was, when your podcast guests are like, as diverse as a tech symphony, how do you make sure the conversation flows smoothly? And then like, how do you build a personal connection? So, and bring out their most remarkable stories? You answered this already, but maybe you want to add something to what you're saying?
Well, there's a lot of steps involved here. So first of all, my podcast is called Remarkable People, not rich people and not famous people. It's remarkable people. So you can be unheard of and poor and still be on my podcast. In fact, let's say the CEO, let's take an extreme. Let's say the CEO of Goldman Sachs wanted to be on my podcast. The answer is no. I'm not interested in your private equity billionaire funds. I don't consider that remarkable because I don't think you've really made a difference in the world. You're rich. That doesn't mean you made a difference. So some of it is the pure selection process. Like at the top of the funnel, what do we kick out and what do we let through? And believe it or not, we reject about 10 people a day for my podcast. So there's 52 episodes a year. We get hundreds of requests to be on my podcast. And like I said, we reject, let's see, if I get 10 a day, let's say I get 3,000 and only 52 come out. So it's 1 out of 60. It's harder to get on my podcast than to get into Harvard or Stanford. How's that?
Amazing. Well, that's why it's called Remarkable People, right?
That's right. And so it's like I said, it starts at the top. Who even enters the system? And then there's all the background research we do, and watching every YouTube we can of the person, reading their books and all that. But anybody can do that, with determination and grit.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, how do you take that data and then figure out what to ask? And for a while I thought, oh my God, ChatGPT is going to be a better podcaster than me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'll tell you something. If you go now, this is 2024, right?
Yeah.
2024. If you go to any of these large language models and you say, I'm having Jane Goodall on my podcast, what should I ask her? You'll get like the really softball questions, like, what is important to you now, Jane? Or, what can we do to prevent the end of the world? And, that kind of question, which I don't really ask.
Right. So maybe let's talk about your upcoming book, Think Remarkable. Can you give us a sneak peek into the key concepts or lessons you'll be sharing in the book? Or
yeah. So
and also maybe what inspired you to write it?
Well, I let's answer the second question first. So,
okay.
I've interviewed 200 remarkable people,
right?
And I feel like that's a blessing that I have a very large data set of thoughts and ideas and tactics and that's practical and tactical of how to make a difference and how to transform people's lives. So I almost feel like I have a moral obligation to bring that out, that it's not just for the people who happen to listen to that episode. And also there's a great value in synthesis. So, I can't expect people to listen to all 200 episodes and synthesize the whole thing in their mind. That's the job I have to do, right? So that's the value add of the author. Otherwise, everybody just take 200 hours and listen to everything and you get the same thing I will.
Yeah.
But you need to have that dedication. You need to have that filter of 40 years of working in the real world to know what is useful and not. So that's what motivated me. And I really, there's been books in my life like If You Want to Write by Brenda Ullin and Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck, Effective Executive by Peter Drucker. And, these are these books that really affected my life. And I hope someday people are saying, oh, I read Think Remarkable and it changed my life. It absolutely transformed my thinking and enabled me to succeed. That's the test for me. I want a book that lasts 20 years, just like those books have lasted 20 years. So this is not I want this book to be timeless. These principles are not going to change. It's not, something like, Six Sigma for quality, that lasts until the next quality idea.
Yeah. Amazing. Can't wait to read it. And actually, again, you answered my next question, partially, because I wanted to ask you about, as a tech legend that you are, looking ahead, what do you hope will be your lasting legacy in the worlds of, technology and marketing? But also you kind of partially answered it. You want this book to be timeless and give so much value to people.
I want my lasting legacy to be the lives of my children. That's number one. I want them to be productive, useful, contributing to making a difference.
Yeah.
So to the extent that you can determine that in your children, I'm trying.
Right.
You have a child, right?
I do,
over time, you'll figure out that you are not in control. Control is an illusion. Maybe you know
I
that
have
already.
no say over anything whatsoever. My child owns me.
as she should.
Right. And
So, but at the end of my life, I want people to say that I helped them make a difference. And I helped them make a difference with the book Think Different. No, excuse me, Think Different. That's the Apple. The title Think Remarkable is a pun on Think Different, the Apple ad campaign. So yeah, Think Remarkable. So I want them to say Think Remarkable, changed my life. The podcast changed my life. I saw Guy speak. I read, other books, whatever. So I want to go down as someone that I enabled them to make a difference, and I empowered them. That's what I want.
Amazing. Thanks for answering. This is very inspiring. And personally, let's maybe ask one of the generic questions that you like so much. What do you do to unplug? You're Guy Kawasaki. You're 69 years old now. What do you do to unplug? And what are the yeah.
So I love surfing. So I surf almost every day, and the reason why we're doing this interview at this time of day is because the tide right now is not good for surfing. So all of my appointments are scheduled around tide.
Okay.
So just so you know, I love to surf. I love to surf, and I love to podcast, and I love to hang out with my family. That's what I do. That's what I do at this point.
Awesome. Speaking of surfing, I would love to learn surfing as well. I'm actually planning on next summer. Hope maybe one day we will catch a wave together, Guy, and maybe surf in California, and that would be amazing. Thank you so much. That was actually the last question that I had for you. It's been such a pleasure to have you on the show. I can't wait to for your book to come and to read it. And I'm pretty sure it's gonna change a lot of people's lives. Thank you so much.
I hope so. I mean, I like I said, I think the podcast is the best work I've done, and Think Remarkable is the best book I've written by far. So, after this, I'm just going to rest.
Amazing.
Thanks
so much again. Yeah.
Thank you very much. All the best to you.
All the best to you as well. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.